And welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And again, I am here recording live. Well, it's not going to be live. You're going to get pre-recorded, guys. I'm in Austin today, and I'm talking with an Austin-based freelance writer. He has written for Texas Monthly, Austin Monthly, the Brown Journal of Philosophy, Politics, and Economics. Some people say economics. I don't like them. Study Hall XYZ, Batshit Times, and some other joints, as it's written here. Please welcome Jade Fabello. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for popping over. We're here. We're doing a cut and paste intro.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
Yeah.
I'm sure you recognize that.
I have heard that somewhere. Yeah,
you wrote it somewhere. It's fine. It's fine. So in that same sort of space, I did the copy and paste. But could you give us that introduction? Give us those vital stats and tell us about your current work.
For sure. Yeah. Well, as you just said, I am a freelance writer based here in Austin. I'm also an editor. I primarily write essays about politics, race, art, grief, love, culture, things like that. I'm a working writer, so I do a lot of smaller stories like profiles on local artists and, top 10 burgers in town, that kind of thing. But primarily I'm interested in writing about the craft and things like that. I have a newsletter called I Love Words in You that I publish every week that dives into a different aspect of the craft of writing. And yeah, that's the main kind of overview of it.
But so that I think leads me into my next question, actually, which it's almost as if you had the questions already.
Yeah.
So your writing includes topics like politics, race, art, grief, love, and those can be kind of heavy, especially the all of them, but especially like the politics and the grief part, right? Mm-hmm. And love. Love is a 4-letter word, as I've said, which sounds really poetic. Does writing energize you or does it exhaust you?
I think that's a really great question. It's something I think about a lot when I was trying to choose my niche, and something I'm still developing. As we discussed a little before the recording, I'm only 24. But my first big story as a freelancer was this piece called What I Learned as a Young Black Political Speaker in Liberal White Austin. So it was a reflection on my time while doing exactly that. It's a very direct title.
It is.
But I had won some speech competitions in high school, and through random stance connections, I ended up connecting all of my genuine feelings about race and politics and things I was learning and discovering to these speeches. And I kept finding myself in these local elite rooms and all these different places. And eventually what that piece is about is my rejection of that path, because I kept finding in those spaces that I was giving these speeches about racism and these things I cared about and connecting them to candidates and a local elite who only agreed with maybe a quarter of what I was actually saying, or their actions only replicated that. And I found myself in a bit of trouble after I had made that piece, because it was really this reclamation of writing honestly for me, not connecting my speeches and my writing into something I didn't believe in. So I was really proud of that piece, but then after the fact, I felt this urge, maybe pressure even, to continue writing things like that and have a few more essays in that same vein. But it is very exhausting to make that your main kind of mode of function, Mm-hmm. So I mentioned earlier up that I'm trying to focus on talking about art itself as and the craft as my main niche,
sure.
And then pulling into those other bigger topics on a more metered schedule.
Yeah.
So I generally find writing energizing, but that's just because I've spent a lot of time trying to not make my income depend on just those pieces that are about grief and race, because I really don't like the idea of forcing yourself somewhere you're not ready to go.
Yeah.
In your writing before you're ready to do it. So yeah, generally energizing, but it's something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I think in doing this, sometimes in doing podcasts, they can be very. It depends on how much you're taking in, because you're talking with people, you're getting their story, and some people, someone has described this to me off mic that, you're just doing a therapy session. And I was like, for some people, perhaps, and it can be a bit trying. So I think I like to batch record, but I like to mix up what the themes might be or what the questions might be. Because let's say if you're sitting there, let's just talk about race in Austin for like 6 episodes. It's like I'm talking with folks about things that are heavy topics that can be rough, and it's like I'm just inundated with these different feelings. And if you're able to empathize, which not everyone does, but if you're empathizing, you're like, oh shit, this is a lot. And you got to be able to break that up. Like, hey man, can we talk about cartoons for like 10 minutes?
For sure. And no, it's very tough. And a lot of people, so the genre I'm specifically in is, you can call it creative nonfiction.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I wanted to do personal essay within that is I always had trouble when I discovered that I wanted to do nonfiction writing. I had trouble with the idea of going to sources and interviewees and pulling out like these really emotionally heavy topics that would give the weight to the stories that I wanted to do in my stories.
Sure.
So I felt like I don't want to ask people to go somewhere that I myself am not willing to go, which is why I focused on personal essay. But I've talked to some other journalists in the field or some other writers who do great work, but if their niche and their topic is something like covering conflict in the Middle East or shootings or whatever else have you, I mean, it's tough work. And
and sometimes it's like, there was a situation back in Baltimore where there was some weird things happening within the arts community, and people were being forced out. A thing that happens to people who are, in a lower class economically. It's like, yeah, Rob, we really want you to cover it. I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified to. I don't know if that. I was like, is it just going to be a complaint session? It's like, and it's like, that's fine. I can take that angle, but really, what are we trying to achieve here? And it's a matter of like looking for that answer, looking for that next question. What are we trying to get from this ultimately? Because I can put on a mic and we can just say, yeah, man, you know what really sucks? And you can do that for an hour. And I'm sure someone will enjoy that. But really, is it going to get some impact? Am I the qualified person to talk about it? Is this the platform for it?
Right.
And that's, I think, applicable through any medium. Like, oh, well, let's look at a movie for sake of argument. Should this white guy be talking about race relations in this way? I don't know. I don't know if that's the guy to do it. It's like, maybe you're a producer. Maybe you're helping to get it out there, but I don't know if you're the guy. I don't know if you're the person.
For sure. It's there's something I wanted to say in there. I'm forgetting it though. It just floated away. Like
it'll hit you back.
Dandelion on the wind. Okay.
That's a great way to describe it. That's great. Yeah. So, in preparation in some ways for doing this trip, I'm a big fan of audiobooks, and I've been doing a deep dive into Austin Kleon, right? And one of the things I remember him touching on is the best writers are big readers, right? So who do you read and how does their writing influence you? Absolutely,
yeah. Thanks for that question. I would say, like most black people who write essays, my first biggest influence was James Baldwin.
Sure.
I remember being in a long-form storytelling class my junior year of college, and I had been doing, I had almost left journalism school a couple of times, or at least switched majors, because there was such a focus on hard news and just doing the standard day-to-day reporting, or reporting quote-unquote factually, unbiased. I'm doing air quotes on unbiased. Recognized as an audio format. But that professor in that long-form storytelling class asked me the type of story I'd like to write, and it was the first time I kind of had the opportunity to realize, I like these stories that are imbued with a strong narrative voice and can actually focus on the storytelling craft of it, as opposed to just reporting the facts and the details of things.
Yeah.
So James Baldwin was one of my biggest influences, always has been. And of some modern writers, I think Hanif Abdurraqib is doing really excellent writing. He's a black guy from Ohio, I want to say. He has this really beautiful piece about Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park's suicide. I think Hanif does some really just great emotional writing that showcases a lot of care and reverence for life and things like that. So I'll throw his name out there.
Feelings. I can't even deal with those. What are those things?
Who would ever? But I'll also recommend, there's this newsletter writer, Anna Quadriorado, I believe her name is. I always mess up if the R is before or after the D. But she just finished a newsletter that she had been running for 5 years that had a lot of great writing and freelance life advice. And there's some local writers who I really respect a lot. Batshit Times, she's an excellent screenwriter who's speaking at this Writers League event here in Austin on June something. I know this is coming out later, but just throwing it out there. But and yeah, some other good friends of mine, Kelly Way, Camille Bauer, some also great local writers here.
I think it's great to be able to have people that are influences, because naturally we steal from them, or influenced by them, because it's nothing's original. And but I think a take, an approach to it can be an original. I think that's where that mix, that amalgam can be original.
Yeah,
I think how that thing is composed. So like, I had to learn that with podcasting. I say, oh, I'm just a black guy on a podcast. It's like, talking to people. Nothing really original in that, but I don't think people are going to ask the types of questions I'm going to ask, or in the same way. I remember someone was like, "Oh, you're doing like a Nardwuar thing." I was like, "Nah, I'm kind of doing a Rob Lee thing," and not trying to sound like a dick about it, but it's just like, no, this is something that it's its own thing, and I think it's important to recognize people like both contemporary, that's local, that are around, that you can reach and touch and have a beer with or what have you, and then people who are they're elders, they're not even around anymore, that you're getting influence from. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's really beautiful I was reading this piece about like what's the role of mentor and mentee relationship, and how it's just so important for people to just keep opening doors for people. I say that, and I'm just annoyed at myself because the phrase "opening doors" sounds like such a cliche phrase, but I think it's there was an anecdote from that piece about this writer who's well into his career, and he had extended this opportunity to this young man who completely just didn't show up. Like, he was supposed to speak at this class, and for whatever reason, he just totally wasn't able to on that day. And didn't tell anyone about it and all that kind of thing. But instead of being mad about that, the mentor in this scenario just, extended a lot of grace there, and really, put in the effort to just really understand the person he was trying to help on a real human level, and throw away that anger and just keep helping him.
Yeah,
I think that's cool.
I think it's like, what's your reasoning behind it? Like, I'm in a spot where I try to help people and get into the podcast space, especially people that look like you and I. And, it's this weird thing where people don't know if it's easy to do or easy to get into. They kind of overestimate, and it's like, that's fine. You can think it's easy. It's fine, but do you have the stamina for it? Do you want to do 10 episodes? Do you want to get in a spot to start off with? Do you want to get in a spot where you're forgetting to record and you got a fire interview and you're like, I need to start over, then make sure I'm recording? And that's one of the things, like, you're trying to pitch it to people, and then it's that question of what's the value in it. And I find myself trying to extend grace, which is something that I'm learning to do, but at the same time, my base starts off with, I want to help people if I can, and I'll extend. That's what I do. But it's like, let's not. I'm a neophyte when it comes to grace. I'm like, yeah, screw you. You didn't show up. That might be what I say actually. So stepping back, tell me about your writing process, and if you could key in on what's the most difficult part of that process for you.
I would say that, generally speaking, when I sit down with a blank page, I adopt a strategy that's very similar to Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, which is a very popular book about writing. In it, she talks about this practice called the morning pages, which is a journaling tool where you sit down every morning. She recommends you do it by pen and paper. I don't, but just you write stream of consciousness, removing all filters from what you're doing. And the idea of doing it in the morning specifically is that as you go on your day, you put on these different masks or facades and different aspects of yourself, but in the morning it's supposed to be the rawest, truest version of you. And so when I sit down to write, regardless of the time of day, I always try to just locate any single thought thread that I have within a certain scope to help the later editing process, and I just follow it. So if there's a weird anime quote or a song lyric that comes to my head that's related to this or related to the feeling or idea I'm talking about, I'll put that in there and address it later. I very much like the idea of writers aren't writers, they're rewriters. And so I build that into my entire process. I would say the most difficult part, there's so many small logistical things that go into actually making a career out of writing, as I'm sure you're familiar with podcasting or any creative field. And I had the revelation when I was trying to send out more pitches to get more stories going, that while I felt like my writing craft was ready, the writer wasn't ready for this certain level of story, the certain level of publication rate or whatever it was. So I would say there's so many little small things that seem very simple, but then there's like 1,000 different tiny steps behind them. Yeah. The example I always use is for pitching a story to a publication, all you're doing basically is finding someone's email and then, writing 2 paragraphs saying, do you think this is a good idea? And then eventually they get back to you or they don't. Yeah. But it took me months to figure out that I needed to find someone's email. Like I had been asking around, and I even had the advantages of being at a really great journalism school at the University of Texas. But for whatever reason, the people who did know that answer, it might have been so obvious to them they didn't even think to tell. It took me a long time to figure that out. And so there's all these different small steps that have a lot of bigger problems behind them. Yeah.
It reminds me of one of these quotes, and I know I'm paraphrasing, but it was just basically the sentiment was masters of people who have done something for a long time. They forget those like kind of smaller steps. Yeah. And it's like, oh, you didn't do that? I thought you should have known that.
For sure.
I kind of have to do that thing, a call for entry sometimes, because with this whole medium is it falls, I think, into multiple buckets. There's a journalism side to it. There's a documentary side to it. There's multiple angles to it, and it's like the same thing that writers might need, the same thing that people that are like doing documentary in like a film sort of way. Yeah. You need people to share your stuff. You need people to put that thing out there. We need growth and things of that nature. And sometimes it's a call for entry of, hey, this QR code would be great somewhere where people can check out what I'm doing, or maybe a small piece being written because people have to hear these stories. That's the point of it. Yeah. And sometimes it's finding that email. It's like, all right, so how do you make a resume parser? An email parser or what have you? How do you grab those things? And it's a lot of searches on like contact us pages. It's like, all right. And one of the things that I implemented into, I guess, what my process is in terms of like the administrative side, which I built out that I have hired a person to help me. I don't use the term assistant, but essentially they're helping on a lot of the admin stuff. I'm like, send out the emails around 1. People are going to answer there. I was like, I have verifiable, because I used to work in like an email marketing code. It's like, send it out at 1. You're going to get a higher response rate, and do a delayed send. Google has it in there. In the 2 paragraphs. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is why you should care, kind of. Right. And that works. But to your point, or to one of the points, I think, when you put that great email together, you think this is going to be great, and then no one responds. It's like, oh, my bad, bro. I didn't see that. It's like, I hate you. I hate what you represent.
Yeah. I like the point you're touching on there is, breaking these skills down into all these smaller little pieces of it, or you realize like, oh, you need to learn analytics and marketing to exercise this craft in the way you want to. I remember being in college at the time where I was doing a couple of different things like public speaking, like I mentioned, some version of writing. At the time, I was also modeling for this fashion magazine we had. And it was I was getting a lot of positive feedback from teachers, professors, and being like, oh, that's great, you're doing all these different things. And then I had told this to the black woman who ran the J school at the time, journalism school, Kathleen McElroy. I was telling her all this, so excited about it, and she looked at me sideways and was like, you should pick something.
That's funny.
Which was great, and it was the first time someone had really had told me that in a good while, to have me focus on pursuing something. And I picked writing, but then once I start doing writing, or really focusing on writing, you realize oh, that branches out into 1,000 different paths as well. You narrow and then you branch back out and realize I need to work on my publishing speed. I need to work on my, self-promotion aspect of it, whatever else have you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I find people I think writing feels kind of transferable. And because I always have this running bit, this thought in my head. I was like, we're dumb here. People don't read. And I was like, but everyone's trying to bring in writers to turn them into something else, though. It's like, I want you to write this type of stuff. Kind of going to the thing that you were touching on earlier. It's like, neutral journalism, that kind of sort of thing. It's like unbiased. I was like...
Yeah. An audience, he did air quotes as well.
Inverted commas. If you had to do something differently as a kid or a teenager, to become a better writer as an adult, what would you do?
I would say that if I had to do something differently,
it was 3 weeks ago, by the way.
Audience, I'm 24, yes. I'm pretty happy with the idea of whatever you are doing before channels into your writing, whatever craft you're doing. I did speech and debate in high school and things like that, and that gave me a good basis for argumentation, even though that's not like writing anyone would want to read or be emotional writing, but that all really helped. But one thing I think I would have liked to do more of is maybe appreciate the stories that I liked when I was younger even more, because there's something that happens when anybody pursues a craft when they start looking at pieces of that craft as a creator of it as opposed to a consumer of it. I know jack shit about music, so when I listen to a song, I'm not being like, oh, that's an A chord, whatever. Yeah. I don't even know enough to finish that example. But my friends who are musicians, they're able to listen and be like, oh, they're doing this, and that. Yeah. And so what is really magical about storytelling is, just being able to appreciate the invisible hand of the writer and just like being taken along that ride. And there's still plenty of stories that do that, and I'm completely flabbergasted by like how the writer's able to create this effect. But I think I probably would have just wanted to read even more or just consume more stories. I don't like using the word consume, but you know what I mean.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
Also, the first time I heard the word flabbergasted said on this podcast, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
I think we can do that revisionist thing. It's like, I wish I knew this. It's like, look, all of it is baked in. Yeah. That lived experience of, I wrote a terrible one. And you got to look back at that to see what that progress looks like.
For sure.
When people are like, listen to your podcast, it's like, how far did you go back? I want to go back to episode 1. No, it's like you got to start with the good ones, not the me trying to figure it out ones.
For sure.
And so it's a thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, outside of the premise of the question you asked me, I wouldn't change anything. I'm fine with how that went.
Absolutely. As you should. And I definitely am getting the speech and debate sort of thing off you. I'm definitely getting that. Yeah.
I'm going to take that as a great insult. But
oh, no. It is a compliment.
I know.
So could you tell me about Afro Rhythm Futures Group, and how do you define, people have always shied away from this question, how do you define Afrofuturism?
Yeah, so real quick, Afrofuturism, for those unfamiliar, is basically just this field of study, a discipline where you imagine black people in speculative sci-fi scenarios or in the future. That's it.
I don't know why so many people have shot. And I don't think I'm qualified. It's like, it's what it is. I don't say it because I'm just Joe Black guy. But actually, I'm probably part robot. Who knows? But still, go ahead.
But the Afro Rhythm Futures Group is this Afrofuturism startup I'm a part of alongside my uncle and then Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar in Star Wars.
Strong.
Fun facts. Yeah. But basically what we do, we run educational workshops with this world-building card game we created that basically just has people have a conversation about the future. And it's really a creativity tool to allow people to think of new options and possibilities. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. One thing I would recommend you check out, which is a shameless self-promotion in the middle of a podcast, but Terrell Telford had a really good interview on here, and he was talking about this stage where the year that the original Star Wars came out, and it was like maybe it was like some centennial. It was like the future, potentially in speculative sort of way, and the past were coming together in 1977 at the same time. And he's like, I was like 6 or something. He's like, I'm just seeing this great thing that's going to be around for like the next 50 years of Star Wars, and something that was like 50 years old at the time. He's like, wow, this is a great kind of like moment in time. He's like, that's his memory from childhood. So when you were like, yeah, I got 6. I was 6 and there's Star Wars for me. It's like, yeah, this is going to be a part of your life for the next 50. Enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one thing we say in that Aphorism Futures group is having the idea of having reverence for the past, awareness for the present, and creativity for the future. So it's really about blending together all 3 of those and seeing them in this kind of continuum. Yeah,
that's a big part of it. When you hear like being cognizant of future, past, and what's right in front of you. I think when you are too focused on probably the past, probably the future, you start having those mental health challenges that pop up. Like, oh, as we look at the future, I don't know if I'm going to be a success. Sounds like anxiety.
Yeah. For sure.
So I got a couple more here for you.
Yeah.
Do you, from this kind of journalist side of things, from this, you're an intellectual type. I get it. That is an insult, actually. No.
Okay. Yeah, I took it as one. Yeah.
As you should. Do you prefer quickly finding the answers or looking for the better questions?
Oh, that's a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ooh, okay.
A bit backhanded, I don't know.
Just like all the other ones, that's a great one.
Just shots back and forth.
I think, so lay out the 2 options for me again.
Do you prefer quickly like finding the answers, like, oh, that's what that is? Or do you want to get to that next layer? Do you want to get really granular and find out the better question? Like when people talk about, well, this is the root cause, now you got to go a level lower.
I mean, it's such a, because it really depends on the arena you're operating in. But sure. I mean, like on a basic level, when I'm interviewing somebody, I mean, I love asking questions that someone hasn't been asked before, that kind of thing, and really finding something that people are passionate about. But if you're going on a broader societal level in terms of serious whatever isms you want to plug in.
Why aren't black people in Austin? How about that?
Oh boy,
spicy.
I mean,
that's a 30-minute podcast. By the way.
It sure is. But it's a matter of there's so much wheel spinning that people do. There's so much. Rob, there's too many can of worms to open up here.
No, totally.
30-minute podcast, for hour, 2-hour podcast. But in general, I guess for the sake of simplicity, I'll go with I prefer asking good questions, but I also think people should be more active and not spin their wheels as much. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I kind of got that off of you because it's hard to be a journalist if you're not asking like those deeper questions. But I think also being aware that sometimes the answer is simple. Yeah. Sometimes the answer is like right there. Like you can go overboard and it's like, oh, why does this happen? People suck. Yeah. Well, I think we have an answer. But then one of the things I always play with is the why part of it. I always go for that. Why? And it's like, oh, well, these reasons. Why? It's almost like I think in data analytics world, it's like the 5 whys. Once you get down to that 5th one, that's when you're starting to figure out like what's at the foundation of these things. And people don't ask enough of those whys to really figure out what's going on. Yeah. And this is when you have these goofy policies that pop up like, oh, well, black people are criminals. Like, well, societal things, laws that we put in place, scarcity.
Yeah. Well, I think a good example of an answer to this question is, people talk about John Oliver's HBO show all the time, and he dives deep into all these different topics. But what he can't say or he doesn't say is like at the root of all those problems is capitalism or what? Yeah. And so that's him going deep, but also the simple answer is there, but for whatever reason he can't say it.
The qualifications, like who are you? You're not from this country, so you're back. And also, because this is a non-visual, I was being facetious when I say black people are criminals because clearly I'm a black person, right? And I am not a criminal.
Well, they got the icon on your thing, no doubt.
It'll be there. It'll be there in post. It's fine. Sure. So now let's talk about Austin a little bit.
Sure.
Describe that first memory you have of Austin, because you're a native, right?
Well, I've been here for 17 of my 24 long years. But I moved here from Houston when I was around 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, after my parents split. And first memory of Austin, I'm just picturing an elementary school playground. I can't. I mean, we first moved into a motel like near the highway for a while, then moved into my mom's friend's spare bedroom. I mean, there's a quote from Last Black Man in San Francisco where great film, where the main character's on a bus and he overhears some like new transplants talking about how much they hate the city, and he says to them, "You don't get to hate it unless you love it." And yeah, that's how I feel about the city, generally speaking. You and I were talking pre-show. It's goddamn hot here. Whatever, tech companies coming in, gentrification out of control, you know?
Running wild like Hulkamania.
Oh, absolutely. I wrote a piece the other day about top 8 soul food places in town. And in between Monday when I put together the list and Wednesday when I wrote the list, 2 places had closed. So, shit like that happens. I mean, it's not getting better, but this is my hometown, and I love it. I love the people that I know here and all the community I have. I like the coffee shops. I mean, it's got a hell of a history. It's got a lot of problems. Love it, hate it.
As I think any city does, like as a native Baltimorean, I always have to rally and be a homer for Baltimore and be in this kind of spot where it's like, you're not qualified to hate this city. Yeah. Or even like rallying and saying like, where's the pride at though at times? And it's like I think a place has to have its identity and it has to be firmly there. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me, please, but I think what happens is in those problems, there's a shift from what the place was. It's like, this isn't what it was when I was here. It's like, I see it's purposely being shifted to look something else, something else.
And it's been really rapid in the past couple of years. I mean, arguably, I'm, again, only whatever age I am, but some people would argue the change from Austin started, before I was born, but a couple of years before that, decades before that. But there definitely is I was just downtown the other day, and random people I was talking to at a bar, like everybody had just moved here within the last 3 or 4 months, new people coming in every day, which, it happens, but there's definitely, just walking down South Congress, our main street, you can see, I mean, it looks more Californian, and more corporate restaurants, more this, that, or the other thing. A very tangible feel to that, yeah.
That's the thing that I try to look for. When I go to a place, when I travel anywhere, and this is the first time I've been here, I try to go to get a sense of what's here. And if it's something that feels like a chain with rare exceptions, I'm like, no, I'm not going to go there. Yeah. If it's something that you should go here, all right, when I got the recommendations from you, I was like, all right, I'm going to check that out and, figure that situation out. And I think if you're getting something that's like, oh yeah, it's so great for sure, it's not, it's mid, it's not great. Or I have a list of whenever I go to a place, because you travel through food is what I do. Yeah. It's like, all right, I had tacos, fine. Now I just need to get barbecue. Yeah. That's kind of the thing. And I don't want to go to a place that feels like, oh, you opened 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I don't want that. Where is the shack? Right. Where is the dude that's got this yesterday, I went to get water from, let's call it a bodega. Sure. And I saw a dude go in there into the laundromat with a cane and an ankle bracelet on. I was like, you're being monitored. This is where I want to be at, actually. Absolutely. These are actual real people. It doesn't feel like it's contrived, because I feel like there's a version of this in Baltimore. Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm looking for. It's where are the real people? Oh, yeah. When I went to Roland's the other day, I went in there and there's just 3 guys sitting at tables by the window. I think one of them just asked for a knife, and presumably Roland walked out from the back and just had a paring knife that he just took from the kitchen. And he's like, "Is this good?" And he's like, "Yeah." And that's a good spot. Yeah. Roland's is the real one I wanted to recommend to you. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I'm gonna have that on in mind.
Yeah.
So I got two more for you before I get two more real questions.
Sure.
Before I get to these rapid fire ones, because everyone gets all like, I don't want to do the rapid fire ones.
I was about to say that.
Well, I mean, that's the face I look when I'm making fun of someone. It's not whining. What would you say to someone who's never been to Austin in terms of like attractions? Like, what are the must-sees kind of here? If you were to pick three things that you feel like this is a Jade thing, like you need to go here, you need to check this out. What are three things for you?
As I said, a coffee shop guy. I really like, my favorite coffee shop in town is probably Opa. It's on South Lamar. Used to be a little grungier. They just did a new paint job. But it's my favorite coffee shop. Got a nice big tree in the yard. I don't know what else to say about it. It's a good coffee shop. I would say, I'm pretty firmly in my stay at home and play board games phase.
Wow.
But let me think. What else? God damn! Did I really only have one answer to that?
It seemed like it. Yeah, I was like, are you really living here? 17 years?
Sure am. It's goddamn hot these days. I'm staying home.
Wait, what is all of this?
Yeah. Geez, a lot of places. There's a nice spot called Grape Crazy, also on South Lamar. I like South Lamar.
You're selling the ticket right now, by the way.
Huh?
You're selling the ticket. I'm gonna have to hit over to South Lamar.
Yeah. I had thought this place where we're at right now was closer to South Lamar when I recommended Ramen Tatsuya, and it was not. So it's totally. Anyway, I like those two spots. I like going to. If you want to say, I like Floppy Disk Repair, which is a speakeasy.
I've seen that place.
Yeah, it's cool. You got to get the code from. There's various places you can get the code, but you can get it from Firehouse if you ask the bartender at Firehouse. Because they change it every day, and you go in. They have oddly enough, they have a lot of cereal and milk-based drinks. I know that doesn't sound appealing, and I can't even drink those. I'm very lactose intolerant.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's tragic, but it's a cool little joint.
Lactose intolerant as well. I was told earlier. That was a thing I heard earlier. I was like, thanks for sharing. I'm using that.
That's fun. I'm pretty sure it comes from my Filipino side, but yeah.
Well, what are you gonna do?
But that's three places.
No, I appreciate it.
For sure.
Lastly, in what ways, where you're at now, being here for big chunk of your life, how do you feel like Austin has influenced your style in terms of either how you approach things creatively, personally, or even professionally?
Yeah, I've always said Austin feels like a big small city. It's always been like you go to a grocery store somewhere in town, you run into 5 people or something like that, even though it has if you look at the skyline, it kind of looks like a big city, but then you go around it and it's oh, that's kind of all there is. Yeah. It's not that big ultimately. So I definitely have always liked that energy of it, where there is some stuff to do. Oddly enough, not that many art museums or things like that. People are always surprised about that when they come here. But there is enough of a creative scene and enough of a community and people that I really have felt a great sense of community here, and the people that I love and my family are all here. So that's always been a big influence on me. But there's enough to do, even though I could only barely think of 3 places to go to. Two and a half. And I tell you, it's my job to also list all the things that happen in town. Yeah, it's mostly a memory thing more than anything.
Just say you have somebody playing you for the day. It's just I just sent someone. I sent an assistant.
I know. Unfortunately, this is how I am all the time.
It's here's the wig, here's the jacket. Go do this podcast.
But yeah, I think. On the other end of it, I think I don't mention this as much because it feels like something from my past now, but it was very formative to me growing up here. As we've alluded to, Austin's only a single-digit % black or whatever, and it's one of the few or only major cities, last time I checked this stat, with a growing general population, a shrinking black population. And I very much, when I was doing my political speaking, that was a big influence on me in that I was saying how I genuinely felt about racism, and I was giving all these speeches simplifying, racism bad.
Monosyllabically?
Simplifying, yeah. But I was giving them on these stages and to these crowds, and these are the same people who gave me the racism I experienced growing up here. Yeah. And so there was this dissonance of feeling like, I don't want to be telling folks here, like, hey, we're the good guys, y'all are the good guys, but also this is where I've grown up, this is where I've experienced what I've experienced. Yeah. And so that was definitely always a big factor. And when I got to college, it was nice to be able to kind of connect with more of, you know, the like at my high school, it was like 4% black. It was like a 3,000 person high school. And then, right? And then college was also a similar percentage, 4 or 5%, but it was 4% of 50,000. So I was able to find a lot more community and people there, yeah. And a lot of people doing some cool work in town. There's a guy you should check out, Javier Wallace, who runs Black Austin Tours here, who does great like kind of deep dives on the city. He also works at UT. But yeah, so I've been able to find the various communities I need here. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for, like, I generally wouldn't, like, I don't feel an urge to leave aside from, you know, whatever external factors of rent, cost, or all these different things. But on the emotional level, I would love to. This is my home, you know. Yeah. And I'd love to stay. Yeah. On
the same page about Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Baltimore's 70% black.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. If you know, you can get all the stuff that you need, all the.
That's good to know.
Camaraderie. What's going on, brother? What it is, man? She's like, watch this airplane. Watch this that scene. All right, so I got some rapid fire questions for you. Sure. I'm going to start off, and please keep in mind, because I always like to give this preface, please, or preface, because people like to say things weirdly. Sure. Keep in mind. Answer these as quickly, whatever pops in mind. Act like that is that writing practice.
Okay,
in the morning. Yeah.
Follow the thread.
All right. Text, phone calls, or emails? Which is your preferred?
Emails. Yeah. I mean, not for friends, but like I send a lot of emails professionally.
I do.
And got some good email track. You said quick. Okay. Yeah.
Salty or sweet?
Salty. Do you want me to elaborate?
No, please. Elaborate on that one. What's your favorite salty treat?
You didn't say treat. You just said salty or sweet.
Well,
and I'm feeling like beef tips and rice right now, you know? So, okay.
I mean, it's a lot of beef down here. You know?
Yeah.
I'm going to save this one for later because I noticed something. I'll be remiss if I don't mention it. Favorite emoji?
Favorite emoji? I like the little confetti popping emoji.
Nice.
Yeah.
Favorite travel destination, and what's an activity that you do when you go?
Well, my partner, whose name is also Jade, fun facts, is going to school out in the UK in London. So I visited them not too long ago. Loved it. It was not. You know, it just kind of happened.
Feels kind of intentional.
Yeah, does it?
Yeah, my partner, her name begins with a K and a U, and mine's is an R and a O. And you can put that together if you want.
Wait, all right.
It's a television service.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. It's like, you guys are like Roku. I was like, ew. Like, say something different.
We're a Chromecast
family. I'm not paying for that subscription. Lastly, describe your fashion sense in 3 words, because I'll be remiss if I don't look at your earrings and see that they're friggin' like the tips of
they
like...
are pen nibs. I did make these. I made these.
Nice. Good on you. That was cool.
Yeah. I had a... Damn, I'm not doing what you're asking at all.
No, this is why I left this one for the last one.
Okay. But yeah, my late godfather, he was very into clothes. He actually made both of these pieces I'm wearing now. Like, he sewed these weird patches onto them.
Yeah.
But he was just very into weird clothes, and he started doing really well for himself at some point and bought a lot of expensive stuff. And we were always the same size, so I'd always go to his place, and he would, he'd just kind of show me around. He's like, oh, these are the most badass, whatever. And it was great, you know. It really helped me out a ton in life, just in general, to have access to all these nice clothes I wouldn't otherwise have. And I inherited even more of his clothes after he passed this past year. So I would say my style is it's a bit eccentric, but it's from it's I just like wearing stuff I like. You know, it's cool, a little weird, whatever.
I like it. It's your own thing. You know, I dig it. But also, it's something that carries over from your Godfather.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If I can find someone that was like my size, like I sized out on my dad's size when I was like, let's say 14.
Yeah.
Maybe younger. It's like because like my dad's 5'9".
Oh yeah.
I am 6'4".
I noticed that. Yeah.
It's like, you're a monster.
Yeah.
It's done. So that's all I had for you today, Jade. I want to thank you for being on this podcast. And two, I want to invite you and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out, your work, social media, all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I had an absolute blast. As I've said, my name is Jade Fabello. You can find my writing on jadefabello.com. The newsletter I mentioned earlier, where I talk about the craft of writing, you can find it at ilovewordsandyu.substack.com. Is that right? That sounds right. It's kind of long. Go to jadefabello.com. I should just take this over again, but whatever.
That's great. That's great.
You can also follow me on Instagram, where I post all the different things I do at Jade__FAB, Jade Fab. I have a Twitter that I use occasionally, Jade_FW. But yeah, that's what I do. I write things. Essays and the like.
For the fab, Jade Fabello, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, writing in and around your neck of the woods, like Austin. You just gotta look for it. The Truth in This Art Beyond is produced with the generous support from Raisin in the Sun, Black Art Matters ATX, and Six Square. Raisin in the Sun is an Austin-based nonprofit organization whose work focuses on cultivating resilience through art and environmental initiatives. Find more out about their mission at raisinинthesun.org. Black Art Matters ATX focuses on amplifying Black voices in Austin's cultural conversation by financially supporting new work from Black artists based in Austin. Learn more about their work at blackartmattersatx.org. And Six Square. Their work focuses on preserving and celebrating the historical legacy of the African American community that once thrived in Central East Austin. Learn more about their work at sixsquare.org. Thank you all for your generous support.